It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thanks for joining us. Our guest, Brian Maienschein, he's a new member of the California State Assembly. We congratulate you, sir, on your victory. You had spent, was it 8 years on the City Council in San Diego? Then you served as the Homeless Commissioner, a paid position. How is it being in Sacramento?
I'm enjoying it.
Really?
Yeah, I am, believe it or not. It's definitely a new experience, something I'm excited about, and anxious to be up here to represent my constituents.
So San Diego has how many city council members?
8.
8. And then the mayor.
Correct.
So the Assembly has 80.
Yeah.
How is that working in a body that's so incredibly large?
Well, it's, obviously, as you said, it's much larger in size, and just like the issues.
And you were a commissioner of one.
Correct.
The homeless commissioner.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You're a body of one.
Just by myself, which was great to me. You know, conferences and all that were really good. I just had to decide what I wanted to do.
At the same time, though, you do join a body as a Republican that has seen better days in terms of numbers. It's amongst the lowest size for the Republican Party in quite some time. How is that for you trying to work through a super minority status?
Well, I think, like you said, I come from a background where that's what I've done. Right. As a city council member, I was in the minority. Right. Certainly, as a homeless commissioner, although you're right, I was one of one. Right. But having said that, we had to work across the aisles with Democrats and Republicans. I think that's important. It's something that I'm proud that I've always been able to do. But secondly, I think it's what we need to see more of. I think we need to see Republicans and Democrats working together.
Forgive this question. Please don't take any personal offense. But when I think of homeless commissioner, I don't think Republican. Yeah, I don't mean to be stereotypical, but how did you come to get involved in this area?
Well, and I don't take offense at that.
I hope not.
I've heard that once or twice.
Right,
so.
Yeah, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but continue. Right.
It was something that was important to me, and I thought I could make a difference. When I was leaving the city council, I had a lot of job opportunities. And I decided instead of cashing in, even though that's what my mom wanted me to do,
clearly,
I would use my contacts and my experience to do something that I thought would make San Diego a better place, and I did.
And I think it's fair to say that you were homeless commissioner during 4 of the most difficult years for San Diego, California, the nation, and the world. I mean, right in the middle of the recession, the Great Recession of this century. I don't know San Diego's numbers specifically, but I can only imagine that San Diego's homeless population increased dramatically for a whole host of reasons. Am I off base?
No, you're right. I mean, you look at what happened with the national economy, the state economy. It was definitely devastating, and you saw the pictures. You know, we saw even families become homeless. You know, people that had not just jobs, but really good jobs, even a year ago.
Brian, I got to tell you, one of the most chilling statistics, or not statistics, anecdotes I've ever heard was I was speaking with someone who worked for a homeless service agency, and she said to me that people who donated 5 years ago are now coming for services. Yeah. I mean, it just makes you want to cry.
It's heartbreaking. I mean, it's really heartbreaking.
Really
and to hear the stories and to see people who, like you say, just a few years ago, their lives
were donating.
Right, they were donating.
Right.
And now they're desperate for services because they see, their future really in jeopardy.
And I do want to ask you, how was it? And I want to talk to you later on about what you're going to do in the Assembly on this issue, if this is one of your goals. But being on a border with Mexico, I have to think the issues facing homelessness were a bit different than maybe in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Stockton.
I don't know about that.
Really?
What I could say is I think it's certainly true that homelessness can be unique to certain cities.
Okay.
It might be a little bit different in San Francisco, per se, or L.A., and maybe then you take smaller cities, right, throughout California, probably a little bit different there. Having said that, there are still a lot of things that really are in common, whether it's the economy, whether it's mental illness, which is a huge, huge component of it. Those things tend to be common regardless of the size of the city or the region.
So, Assemblymember, now that you've finished your tenure in San Diego as the homeless commissioner, talk to us about your goals as you move to Sacramento.
Well, in regards to homelessness, I think, I was very successful in instituting Project 25 in San Diego, where we identified the 25 most expensive to taxpayers chronically homeless in San Diego. We got them in housing and services. We found in 1 year we ended their homelessness and saved taxpayers approximately $7 million.
Sounds like a win-win. The challenge, though, I mean, there's some good news and bad news. We know that Sacramento has been in deficit for years. At the same time, whether you support a Prop 30, I don't know, but Prop 30 did pass. And so, arguably, that's given the state more money. the governor isn't looking specifically to backfill, I'll call it, social service programs, but there is more money in Sacramento than there had been. So is there a pot, I don't use that term pejoratively, for social services?
Well, I think the fact that you see a little bit of a rising tide in California's economy is significant, because when you look at years past, it was these really draconian cuts throughout the budget because the budget deficit was so enormous. Right. And now that's not the case. There has been an improving climate in the state, and that's good news for everybody.
But what about the issues specifically related to social services? Because, look, I mean, Governor Brown's friends on the left are not happy with his budget, his proposed budget for next year, because they don't feel as if that there has been a recoupment of the, quote, draconian cuts over the last 4 years. And these are his friends on the left.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think what's going to have to happen from a budgetary standpoint is I think we also we have to be mindful of the fact that it is improving, but it's not where it needs to be yet. And so I think there are those who are going to need to rein themselves in and control what their instincts may be as far as overdoing the spending. Having said that, I think there's room for thoughtful approaches, and where the money is being spent appropriately, I think that should continue.
Right. We spoke about your super minority status as a Republican member of the Assembly. And I think ultimately Republicans will need to work with Democrats, obviously. This sure feels like an issue that you can talk to your Democratic friends about. I mean, I could name a whole host of Democrats that would love to partner with a Republican on an issue relating to social welfare.
I agree. I mean, I think it's an exciting opportunity, certainly for the state. It's good for the Republican Party because I think there is a perception sometimes out there that, you know, this hasn't traditionally been an issue maybe Republicans have identified with or even cared about. And so I am excited to work with both Democrats and Republicans to start providing some solutions to these issues.
So have you marched down that path yet? I know your first batch of bills, obviously I have not seen all of them, but I know it focused on veterans, which makes sense. I mean, you represent San Diego, and it's a veterans community, but are you looking towards that, or are you trying to spread out your wings a bit?
Well, first off, I'm mindful of the fact that this is my first year. And
you got 12.
And I've got 12.
Arguably.
Yep, that's right. You know, if all goes
well,
right, and if it's something that I choose to do and the voters choose to continue to send me here, I'd obviously be honored to serve here 12 years. So I'm mindful of the fact that I have time to be thoughtful and intelligent and reasonable in my approaches, and I want to do that. So this is one area where certainly I see an opportunity for Republicans and Democrats to work together to solve a problem. It's good for California. It's good for my district.
Were there any bills that you dropped on that last day that dealt with homelessness?
We do have, we essentially kind of have a placeholder on that.
I see.
And so we do have a bill that's in there that's allowing us the opportunity to do something that we're probably going to do, frankly, over a 2-year period, just to make sure that it's something that's comprehensive and thoughtful, that we have the opportunity to make sure that Republicans and Democrats both can come together and be happy with it.
Can you give us a sneak peek?
Well, I think
what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think there's no question a huge component of it's going to be addressing mental health issues, because if you look at particularly amongst the chronically homeless, really close to 100% of the chronically homeless have some sort of mental illness, and so I think it's important we address that.
And what's sad about that population is that some of them are just resistant to services, so it doesn't matter how much money you throw at them, or programs, they're just service resistant.
It's difficult because they are mentally ill,
right.
And so by definition, a lot of them aren't making reasonable, rational choices because of their mental illness. What we found is once we get the mental illness treated, it's a lot easier to treat everything else because it kind of flows from that. So one of my focuses is going to be what is our state doing to respond on mental health issues, because not only I think is it the humane thing to do, but I think we can save a lot of money.
His name is Brian Maienschein, member of the California State Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thanks for joining us today. Our guest is Brian Dahle. He's a new member of the California State Assembly. He comes from Lassen. He was a member of the Board of Supervisors there. How's the new job, man? I mean, very different from Lassen Board of Supervisors, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we come off of a Board of Supervisors where you have to count to 3.
Right.
You got to get 3 out of the 5.
Right.
And now it's 41, obviously. Right. So a little different environment. the opportunity to be here 12 years, I think, is
No doubt.
With the building relationships, and I think that's going to be a positive thing for California. I'm very excited about it.
You do come, though, at a difficult time as a member of the Republican caucus, in that this is the first time in decades that one party has a supermajority, and that's not your party. So how's that going for you?
Actually, I think there's still going to be great opportunities. I don't think the super minority that I'm in, we're going to find out here in a couple of weeks, actually, but I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think that the other party has its difficulties in trying to just steamroll us, and I quite frankly don't think they want to. I think they need to bring us along and want to work together.
You probably heard Speaker John Perez when asked what will he do with his new supermajority. He said nothing.
Yeah.
Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it was a pretty pithy comment.
I had a conversation with the speaker for about 45 minutes, and he mentioned the same thing, that he wanted to work across the aisle and move California in a productive way forward.
I will say this: you got a plum assignment. You are vice chair of Rev and Tax.
Yes, I am.
That's a real committee. And how is that going for you? I know that you're a businessman yourself, a farmer. And so the business climate, both literally and metaphorically, when I say the word climate, is important to you.
Absolutely. The reason I ran for the state legislature is I am a business owner. I'm a third-generation farmer here in California. We have to make payroll at our business. As a county supervisor for 16 years, Lassen County is totally debt-free. We funded our.
How is that possible?
We funded our pensions, we funded our unfunded liabilities, and we have no debt. And we did that by educating our employees on where we were at in the budget process, being frugal when we, just like we do on the farm. When we had good years, we took care of debt, and on the lean years, we held the line with our employees.
Well, let's talk about the time we're in right now, 2013. Whether you support a Prop 30 or not, irrelevant for the purpose of this conversation, because as a result of its passage, it appears that California is not in the red. California may actually be in the black. Give or take a few billion, but that's a lot better than $46 billion from 5 years ago.
It does give us some breathing room, but at the end of the day, we still have a large debt out there that the state needs to focus on. We did realignment, the AB 109, which moved prisoners to counties, so that debt went with to the counties.
Let me ask you about that. I'm not sure if you're a signatory to a letter I've seen from both Democrats and Republicans in the legislature that are very concerned about how money is being allocated for prison realignment. A lot of members from the Central Valley are concerned that smaller counties are not getting their fair share of prison realignment dollars, even though they may have a lower number, but per capita, they face the same fiscal challenges.
Well, and they don't have room to house them. That's the case. We're taking them out of state prisons and put them into county facilities, and some of the counties don't have the room for those prisoners.
So you must know about Lassen as an example, a nice, fairly rural county. How is Lassen doing?
We actually have room for the inmates that are coming down right now, but we have enough room that we're contracting out to other counties.
That's how you saved your debt crisis.
We try to do things business wise there, but yeah, we had room, so we contract out with other counties. But Prop 30 has given us some breathing room to be able to for 7 years now, hopefully get the business rolling.
Well, so Mr. Dahle, you mentioned that Prop 30 should give us some breathing room. And aside from Prop 30, there's this whole question about how California taxes. I mean, we are heavily reliant on capital gains, on high-income wage earners. And that's great when you have a big internet bubble, but it's not so great when you have a downturn.
Well, 5% of the 61% of the state's income budget comes from 5%.
Right.
So
exactly
those folks are going to be leaving the state if we continue to tax them. What we really need to focus on is creating jobs, which creates revenue tax-wise, puts people to work, grows the economy, which grows the stock market, which takes care of some of the long-term debt problems we have.
Let's talk about sales tax as an example. Prop 30 passes. In some counties, they have their own sales tax initiatives. I mean, there are some counties that are at or near 10% sales tax. Query whether that's a good thing. I'm not commenting. I'm neutral. But there are discussions, and other states are looking at whether we should lower sales tax overall, but spread out the items that can be taxed. Start taxing manicurists, lawyers, services, What do you think about that?
I'm opposed to that. Look, we're the highest taxed state in the union. We need, and when you mention local taxes, it just drives the consumers to different areas. In my district, I border in Oregon and I border Nevada. So Oregon has no sales tax, period. So people can travel out of my district into Oregon, buy their products, bring them back into California.
Couldn't one argue, though, that if you lower the sales tax and spread it out, you'd have less ability or less likely to fly to Oregon, Nevada,
Absolutely.
or elsewhere?
Anytime you lower taxes or fees, it's going to keep your consumers closer to you.
So why is it, why are you opposed to that proposal then?
Well, I'd have to see the proposal. I have not seen that yet, and so obviously I'm interested in lowering any taxes or regulatory environment in the state.
There's no doubt, though, that you have looked at the question of property taxes. That's where counties get a lot of their money. And as you know, as well as anyone, Prop 13 passed in 1978 and it requires a 2/3 vote for any increase in sales, in any tax for that matter. There have been some tinkering as it relates to school bonds. There's now discussion about lowering the threshold more generally, be it for school infrastructure projects or otherwise, to 55%. What do you think about that?
I think the jury's still out on that. Look, Prop 13, if Prop 13 wasn't here, I wouldn't have my farm. That's just the bottom line. And
because of increasing property
right.
taxes.
And, prior to Prop 13, 78, county boards of supervisors were able to set the tax rate in their county, and that changed. And so the 2/3 vote, I think that represents a lot of the taxpayers, and I think that's a good thing. And there's obviously room for movement on some of those other districts, such as schools, and then we should take a look at that.
Okay.
But if it's really a need, the taxpayers typically will step up and vote when there's a real need for it. And I've noticed that.
High.
It is high,
Yeah,
and it's hard to get. I've worked on many
Right,
many local issues. But if you educate the voters, typically they will do the right thing.
Likewise, there's discussions about changing Prop 13 formulas, possibly keeping the formulas the same for residential.
Yes, and doing split rolls.
Split rolls, that's the term, and changing it for commercial. I'd love to hear what you think of that.
Anytime we mess around with Prop 13 and how we change it, split rolls versus single roll or residential, I think we're going to be driving businesses away from California. And, we have the highest tax rate in the nation. I think that's plenty high. I think we should focus on creating jobs, getting out of the regulatory environment so we can give our business people some security.
I'm so glad you brought up regulation, because it is one of those areas where I feel as if there could be some bipartisan agreement. I mean, the governor of the state of California, a Democrat, has said on the record, we have too many damn regulations.
We do, and that's exactly why I ran for this office. I'm in business. I'm overregulated, overtaxed, mainly overregulated. And
right, that's what I've heard.
You need to give people who create jobs need security, knowing that if they're going to take the risk to put somebody to work, that they're not going to change the rules in the middle of the game.
So I've used this metaphor before. It's like Nixon going to China. Only Democrats could actually push through regulatory reform, because if it was a Republican, it would be seen as somehow too pro-business. So now you have a chance.
And I think there's a lot of Democrat support.
Right, but that's my point. Now's the time. Pounce.
Yep, there's 38 new freshmen came into the assembly. A lot of them have businesses in their communities that are overregulated, and I will be more than happy to work with them to move legislation that will keep business people in California, give them security, and to put people to work.
Speaker Perez ready?
I think so, absolutely. When I had my conversation with him, I believe he's ready. I think there's some in his party that might be a little tough to bring along, but I can get them on my side.
You only need to 41. His name is Brian Dahle. He's a member of the California State Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. You're watching Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Tom King. Now, he is the mayor pro tem of the city of Walnut, but today he is joining us as a sergeant in the California State Military Reserve. It's an organization I was not acquainted with. It's not the National Guard. And Tom, I am so glad you reached out to us so you can educate us about this military department that many of us aren't aware of.
Well, it is a part of the state California Military Department. You have the regular Army, you have the Army Reserve, you have the California National Guard.
And those are federal. Those are
California National Guard is both federal and state.
Okay.
Normally, the California National Guard is under the supervision of the governor,
Right.
unless they're called to federal service.
Right.
And we have guardsmen serving in Kosovo and Afghanistan and places like that.
Exactly.
What the California State Military Reserve is in the California Military Department. We're a sort of a brother organization of the
Okay.
National Guard. And what we do is we backfill the National Guard and assist them. We're a volunteer organization where the National Guard has 24,000 members. We have 1,000 members. We volunteer our time. We get paid, unless we get called to active service, we don't get paid, but we only get $125 a year uniform allowance.
Right, and you got quite a snappy uniform, if I may
Well,
say.
But there are other benefits we get. For example, an 18-year-old youngster that wants to pay for his college, we earn the same military educational benefits
really?
as the Guard. So if a young man or woman decides they
Right.
want to serve and volunteer, they serve 2 years, they qualify for free admission to Cal State or part of the cost of going to the university system. Right now, I believe it's $5,400
Right.
a year.
Look, that helps.
It helps
It's
a great
undeniable.
deal.
It's undeniable. Now, how does someone join the California State Military Reserve?
Well, we have a website called csmr.org,
Right.
or you can contact me at tking@ci.walnut.ca.us.
But what are the requirements? Because I would have thought that the requirements were quite extensive. I'd have to pass a physical, which I surely couldn't pass, but it's different.
We do have height and weight requirements. We have certain waivers for certain physical conditions. We actually have one soldier who's an amputee, has one arm missing,
Right.
and he serves in a limited capacity. It is a specialized training for people that may not completely pass the physical training of the military.
But here's the key. You can join at essentially any age. I mean, you joined how many years ago?
I joined 3 years ago, and I'm almost 65.
Right, so you joined at the age of 61 or 2. So this is not what we would think it is. It's something very different. It's a way to serve in a different way, and and you can do it.
There's a lot of people that say, I support the troops.
Right.
I want to give back. And I didn't know about this organization until I met a city council member from Long Beach who is a sergeant in the organization, Jerry Schultz.
Oh, sure, okay.
And he told me about it and talked me into joining. I didn't know it existed either. But the kind of things we do is different than what people might imagine.
Right, and what's nice is, so you had been a cop, and so you had some experience in defense, I guess one could say. But you bring in lawyers that don't have traditional military training. You bring in all sorts of folks.
We have lawyers. We have journalists. We have spokesmembers for these. We actually would help the National Guard in announcements and things like that. We have people from every range. My company, which is located less than a mile from here, has a security guard, has a PhD in pharmacology from Loma Linda University, has a person that runs a driving school. We have a police officer. We have all kinds of backgrounds and professions.
So if you sign up and you are admissible, will you go through basic training? How does it work?
No, you don't go through Army basic training. You go through a 3-day weekend course to get you to familiarize with the military customs and courtesies. And then we train on the job. That meeting that you go to 1 or 2 days a month is part of the continual training.
Yeah, so what is the commitment?
The commitment is a minimum of 1 day a month. That's it.
Okay.
1 day a month.
And what is one doing on that 1 day a month?
Well,
I guess it depends.
It depends on where you're assigned.
But as an example.
Well, in Azusa, where I work out of, we're an Army support unit. So we support the military and weapons training and getting their driver's licenses because they're going to deploy overseas. For example, if you get a young 18-year-old girl who's never driven a big truck, she's going to drive a big military truck with a trailer. We have people that teach her how to drive the vehicle, test her on operation, give them a military driver's license, and they're ready to deploy. The other thing is that we have soldiers that are in support roles, like they might be in a finance company or in the National Guard, and they might have been in 3 or 4 years since basic training. They got a little rusty on their weapons skills. We take them up to the armory. We use lasers, and we teach them how to shoot again, and then we take them to Fort Irwin or we take them to Camp Roberts, and
Wherever it may
we
be.
qualify them on the range. And by having what they call CSMR soldiers, it allows the entire company of National Guard soldiers to train. They don't have to provide their own cadre to train themselves. So more of them get the on-the-job training.
And if someone is not interested per se in, let's say, weapons, you have suggested that you can be involved in a different capacity. A journalist like myself could be involved in public affairs. An attorney, which I used to be, could help a soldier as he's about to deploy or she's about to go overseas to get her affairs in order in case something happens.
A chaplain could be
Right.
giving emotional support to soldiers. I think really the thing that's really important what we do is when these soldiers deploy, we're at the airport to see them off.
It's nice.
We're there when they come back.
It's nice.
Okay, if they come back early and they come back alone and they've given their life, our soldiers are down there when the plane lands and welcomes that soldier back. So it touches the heart.
I can see you're welling up a bit, and I'm very touched by that. How is it that this organization, which seems to do such good work, is so below the radar? Why is it I've never heard of this? And I pretend like I know everything about California government.
I didn't know. It actually goes back to 1917. There was actually a naval component that had ships that were actually brought into the Navy and deployed in World War I. And that was in richer times for California. We have an air component and we have an Army component. The air component does things like security at March Air Force Base, Channel Islands Air Base, at the Joint Forces Training Center down in Los Alamitos, where all the military units from different organizations train. They provide base security, they provide training and classes, simulators and stuff like that. It's been beneath the radar.
Yeah, and it's clear, based upon the depth of emotion that you're sending my way and our way, that it really has touched you. If you can, really dig deep and give us a sense of what these last 3 years have meant to you. I mean, you served the LAPD for 30 years, so you know what it's like to serve and keep people out of harm's way and make sure that they can live productive, prosperous lives. But clearly, I can sense that this is different service even for you.
I was a youngster. I served in the military. The military made me a man. When I came back from the military, I knew that I could accomplish anything. They gave me self-confidence. They paid for my education. They helped me get a veteran's preference and to promote on LAPD. The training I got in the military helped me become a good police officer. Well, likewise, I feel it's given back. When I go to the armory and I see a 23-year-old young lady that served 3 tours of combat in Afghanistan and Iraq, I have a tremendous amount of respect for them. The soldiers that we have working out of our San Bernardino armory go out to Fort Irwin. It might be 20 degrees, and they go there to go to the mess hall at 4 in the morning to get food to serve soldiers that are out there on bivouac. They hated doing that when they were in the Army, but they feel honored to support those young people that do so much to make us free. And I think that's kind of what it is. It's sort of a giving back. I've always wondered of what can I do at my age to give back? And to me, this is the best organization I've ever found.
You found it, and I am so glad you did. And I hope that our audience will consider looking into joining the California State Military Reserve. It clearly is an innovative, exciting organization. And thank you so much for telling us about it. His name is Sergeant Tom King of the California State Military Reserve. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition.